Hi everyone, welcome to Nithrania Game Club. My name is Branislav Berec and you're watching Game in a Nutshell, the series of video tutorials where we teach board games. Today we're taking a look at the new game called The River from the Days of Wonder. First, place the board in the middle of the table, using this side for 2-player game and this side up for 3 or 4-player game. We will set up here a 3-player game. Then shuffle all the terrain tiles and place them on the board. If you would like to make your life a little easier, take a bag like this, put all the terrain tiles into the bag and draw the tiles directly from the bag. The game has some sort of a preliminary round, and for that draw as many tiles as there are players, plus one more. So for a 3-player game, draw 4 tiles. For a 4-player game, you would draw 5 tiles. Then shuffle the building cards and draw 1 card to every spot on the game board. Next, put resources on these 4 islands. The symbols over here indicate how many resources you put onto the island for each player count. For a 3-player game, it's going to be 10 pieces of clay, 4 tokens of food and 10 tokens of stone and wood. These are the only available resources in the game. You can put all the remaining tokens back into the box. Then place all the bonus tokens with the value 0 on this spot and the remaining tokens on the left spot, sorted by value, starting with number 1 and with number 6 on top. For a 2-player game, use only the tokens with these 2 dots on the top. Then give each player a player board, and again, one side is used in a 2-player game and the other side is used for a 3 or 4-player game. Each player will also get this boat. Then put 4 pioneers on this boat and the 5th one on this spot on the player board. Then randomly choose the start player, who will receive this boat token, and the play can begin. In the river game, players are using these workers called pioneers to take actions on this game board to develop their own player board. They gather resources over here, and for the resources they buy buildings, and buildings provide victory points. In addition, players collect these tiles, which they arrange into their player board along this river, and they're trying to arrange them in such a way that in each column they have the terrain tiles of the same type. The more tiles they have the same, the more points they get. And whoever has the most points wins the game. The game normally starts with the first player and then going clockwise. However, in this game there is a preliminary round which starts with the last player and going counterclockwise. Each player will choose 1 tile from this supply and places the tile on the first available spot in the top left corner. When all players are done with their first selection, there will be 1 tile remaining, which is put into the box. It will not be used in the game. Then immediately draw new tiles, and for a 3-player game, fill in all these 6 spots, and for a 4-player game, you would also fill these 2 spots. And now the first round can begin, starting with the first player and then going clockwise. On your turn, you take a pioneer from your boat, put it on any free spot on the game board and perform that action. Then the next player can take his or her action, and then the next one, and the game progresses in a clockwise order. Now we will cover all the actions in more detail. First of all, at the beginning of your turn, if you have 3 resources of the same type, you can take these 3 resources, put them back into the island, and take 1 food, which is a wild resource, in return. This is indicated by this symbol over here. If you have multiple resources, you can do it multiple times. Next, you must place a pioneer on the game board. With this action, you can take one of the available terrain tiles and place it on the next available space following the river flow. If you would have any resources on this spot, you can move them elsewhere, or you can also put them on the tile you have just claimed. If your game board would be completely filled with terrain tiles, you cannot take this action. As indicated by these symbols, one player can only perform this action maximum 2 times per round. This action allows you to take one of these building cards and put it into your reserve face down. Now, do not refill this space yet, even if another player comes in and takes another card, or it could very well be the same player. These spots remain empty until the end of the round. At any time during the game, you can have maximum 2 cards in reserve. If you already have 2 cards in reserve, you cannot perform the reserve action. With this action, you can actually build the buildings. As indicated by this symbol, there is no limit to the number of workers here per round. When building a building, there are 2 options. First one allows you to take one of the available buildings and immediately construct that building by spending resources from your game board. This building requires 4 wood and 1 clay, and remember, you can always use these wild resources. Take the resources from your game board and put them back to the corresponding islands. You can slide the building you have just constructed onto your player board to hide the victory points. After you construct the building, take the bonus token of the highest value and place it on a corresponding circular spot. The second option is to build a building from your reserve. As indicated by this symbol, you can save 1 resource of your choice. So for this building, which costs 3 wood and 3 clay, I can decide to spend 3 wood and only 2 clay. Again, return the resources to their corresponding islands and slide the constructed building under your player board. When you construct the second building, immediately take this pioneer and it becomes available for you immediately. Again, after constructing a building, take the highest value bonus token and place it on a corresponding spot. When this left column of bonus tokens runs out, you keep taking the tokens with the 0 value, because this particular tile gives you points based on number of tokens you have on your game board. When you place your pioneer to the resource island, you obviously take resources. Take as many resources as you have corresponding symbols on your game board. It doesn't matter whether the symbols are on these empty spaces or on these tiles. So in this case, I would take 2 tokens of wood. If you manage to put your pioneer on this bonus spot, you take 1 additional resource. Take the appropriate number of resources from the game board and place them on these storage icons. If you run out of these icons and all of them would be completely filled with resources, for example like this, you may take no more resources. Stone, wood and clay islands only have 2 spots for each round. However, the food island has no limit to the number of workers that can go there. When you take food, you only take 1 food. If you take a food action and there's no food available, you can take 1 resource of your choice from any resource island. All other resources are limited, so if you run out of 1 resource type, there is no more available to be taken until there are some resources returned back to the island. One final note to the resource production. If you would construct a building and cover the resource icon, you lose that icon. So if I would produce wood now, I would only take 2 tokens of wood. The same applies to these storage icons. If I would construct a building and cover the storage icons, I'm losing that storage adding something else, but I'm not losing the resources. I can reallocate my resources to other spots if available. If not, I have to lose those resources. This action down here allows players to swap a position of any two tiles on his game board. This is useful for scoring purposes, which we will cover in a moment. The last action we will talk about is this first player action. The player who takes this action takes the first player token and becomes the first player for the next round. If nobody takes this first player action, the first player token stays where it is. After all players have placed all their pioneers, it's the end of round. First, remove all the remaining terrain tiles and again replace them with new ones. Refill the empty spaces with the new building cards, but unlike with terrain tiles, do not discard the cards that were not taken in the previous round. And finally, take all your pioneers from the game board and put them back onto the boat. When you cover one of these spots with the terrain tiles, as it happened over here, you have to leave one of your pioneers on that spot or over here as indicated by this symbol. You lose this pioneer for the remaining of the game and you do it at the end of the round. When any player builds the 12th terrain tile or builds a 5th building, finish the round normally and then the game will end. First, you get 1 point for any 3 resources. So this is 1 point and this is the second point. Then you score the columns. If the first 2 tiles in a column have the same type, you score 2 points. If all 3 tiles in the same column have the same type, you score 6 points. This tile has 2 types, so it can count as the forest or as a desert. So looking at this column, it has 3 tiles of the same type. It's again 6 points. In this column, the first and a second don't have the same type at all, so players receive no points. Even though the first and a third tile have the same type, it's still 0 because these first 2 have to have the same type. Then add the points from these bonus tokens and also points from the buildings. Also score these meadow tiles. There are 2 of them in this player board and you can find a detailed description of these tiles at the back of the rulebook. Then sum up all the numbers together and the player with the highest score wins the game. In case of a tie, players share victory. And that's it. That's how you play the river game. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. You've been watching the game in a nutshell. If you like the show, subscribe to our channel. And until next video tutorial, my name is Branislav Berec. See you next time.